Hi, welcome to the channel, everybody, and today we're going to be talking about recency bias. Recency bias has become one of the most prevalent terms used specifically with this year. Now, it's a every year occurrence whenever we're ranking players, specifically in the NFL. A lot of people use recency bias as a cop-out for wanting to rank players above certain others, and it's been pretty predominant as we've had one main surprise team this year in the Cincinnati Bengals, and it usually happens when you have a player from a very low ranking in previous years skyrocket to a top 5, top 10 potential, depending on where you want to place them. And specifically, we have seen it with Cooper Kupp. We've seen it with Jamar Chase. We saw it last year with Justin Jefferson. A lot of people didn't want to put him in top 10 because he was a rookie, and a lot of people were like, well, we don't want to put him in there because of recency bias. Not to mention Joe Burrow launching himself into a top 7 production for a quarterback. And I want to talk about why we need to shut up about recency bias. It's not a term that we need to just have a crutch on. A lot of instances where people are going to sit here and write down, oh, well, I'm not going to put this guy because he's only done it for this specific year. And in all honesty, recency bias should be something that we talk about from week to week. You don't want to launch a guy just because in last week's performance he jumps up to number 1 in your ranking because he had 250 yards. That wouldn't really work because, I mean, Tyreek Hill, he has some really, really low games. You wouldn't want to drop him out of your top 5, top 6. Things like that, that's where I see recency bias, where you watch the game and automatically change your rankings just based off of that one game, specifically in the regular season. But recency bias has specifically blown into a giant one-year specification, and I think it's time to really stop doing that. The best example of that is Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp was not a top 5 wide receiver last year. He was not even a top 10 wide receiver last year. He was predominantly known to be a good above average wide receiver for the LA Rams, who had been dealing with some injury troubles going into this year. And a lot of people were excited to see what his production would look like, even Robert Woods with Matthew Stafford as their quarterback. And what happens? He gets a triple crown, Super Bowl MVP, Super Bowl championship. Like, all of these things potentially, and I think, in my opinion, the best wide receiver season you could potentially have. It's practically winning all the awards in the NBA. Hakeem Olajuwon, things like that. Like, it is unheard of, and he is legendary status just solely on this season alone. And a lot of people do not want to put him in the top 3. I think he's number 2 behind Davante Adams because of recency bias. Specifically on TikTok, you're going to see this all over the page. A lot of people want to discredit players because of this term. And the truth of it is, why are we not ranking the players on how they are right now? Not 5 years ago, not 2 years ago, not even last season. People are basing most of their arguments off of this guy has only done it for 1 year. Well, what if he continues it for next year? Is that finally going to be enough for you? Because at the end of the day, production on what happens in this season matters very much so, because it shows potential moving into the next season. If you're just going to base your rankings off of potential, then I don't really want to have a conversation about rankings, because I'm never going to be able to see how you feel about a player right now. I'm only going to see your projection of that player. And it's a lot of problems with NFL fans right now as they try to focus so far into the future because maybe they don't believe their team is a contender this moment, or maybe they are a rebuilding team and they're just excited to see how this player is going to be. Like, Jamar Chase is a top 5 wide receiver this year because he produced like a top 5 wide receiver. Cooper Kupp's a top 2 wide receiver because he produced like one. Davante Adams has produced for multiple years, and he even acted like a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. I'm not saying this sole season is how you should base your entire rankings on, but it should be heavily favored a little bit, just because, I mean, this is the most recent productive year that they had. You don't know if they're going to get injured next year. You don't know if maybe the year before was just a fluke. And it's okay to have a fluid amount of rankings. Like, you can change them. That's not a big deal to me. I don't feel bad if you change your take because of a production or because a player lets you down. Except that you're wrong, except that your prediction was wrong of how good they were going to be. But don't just say, oh, well, I mean, I'm going to keep this guy here because, I mean, I don't know, it was 1 year. The exception doesn't make the rule. And that's another thing that I've been seeing a lot of NFL fans say. Well, the exception doesn't make the rule. If this most recent year is the exception, I understand putting a guy that has longevity of production like Davante Adams ahead of Cooper Kupp. But Cooper Kupp has had such a legendary season. He deserves to be in that conversation. Justin Jefferson has done it for 2 years. So that's why you're going to put him above Jamar Chase. Tyreek Hill has blitzing speed, but he has high highs and very low lows. Like, it's a range with him. He's not as consistent. Numbers are there, but game to game, he's not as consistent. So maybe you put him at 4. Debo had one of the most prolific, wide back seasons, and that's a new position that's going to be developed as we see through the coming years, potentially in the NFL, is the wide back position. Debo could be potentially top 5. And then we talk about DeAndre Hopkins, who has had such consistent production since, 2014? And now he is being talked about as not even a top 5 wide receiver, as people were unanimously saying he's at least top 3 because he had such a down year. Ranking wide receivers is a very complex thing to do, and this is for every position. Let's switch to quarterbacks. A lot of people don't want to rank Joey Burrow because, well, it was 1 year. It was recency bias, right? He had 1 year where he took the Bengals, one of the most poverty-based franchises, to the Super Bowl. And a lot of people want to discredit that with a terrible offensive line. I don't care about the damn analytics. Now, I will admit that Justin Herbert video I put up, I did not research well enough, and I was just in the moment. You could say that was recency bias because I went from game to game, and the hype behind Joe Burrow continued to grow. I deserve all the hate on that video. I will admit to it. I still would consider potentially picking Joe Burrow to start a franchise, but I don't think Joe Burrow is better than Justin Herbert. I will admit that I was wrong, and that was a dumb video of mine. But do not discredit Joe Burrow just because this 1 year he had a really solid year. I understand a lot of people are feared that, well, it's going to be a 1 year wonder and your prediction's going to be completely wrong. Just admit that you're wrong. You're not going to go 100% on all of your predictions. Truth of it is, if you truly believe that Cooper Kupp's a top 2 wide receiver because of this production this year, and you believe the next year he's going to be able to at least maybe get like 10% less of that production, that's still potentially a top 2 wide receiver in the NFL. There's nothing wrong in saying that. That's what's so frustrating. I think people are so scared to be wrong in their takes that they're just going to assume, well, he only did it for the 1 year. Matthew Stafford has been practically the same quarterback up till the very end of the Lions years when he was with Matt Patricia and truly fell off. That's why they finally were like, all right, we got to throw in the cans. We got to trade this guy. And he has a fantastic year at the Rams and put up relatively the same stats. You want to know what the biggest difference was? They won ball games because he actually had a defense and he actually played like an elite quarterback, and he should be ranked as such. He was still one of the most underrated quarterbacks on the Lions. He just couldn't win. And that matters because he is the one leading that offense. He's the one making the plays for his wide receivers and putting them in positions to win. There's a reason why he was doing so many game-winning drives for the Lions. He should have been respected as an elite quarterback. He's not a bad quarterback at the Lions and then now a great one. He's been the same guy so far. Cooper Kupp had plenty of production, but he couldn't stay on the field. Not to mention Jared Goff was not the same level of Matthew Stafford, and now he gets amazing production. Things change. It's okay to be wrong in these situations. You're not going to go 100%. And it's okay to account for the past 5 years or past 3 years of the production of the wide receiver. But what happens right now? We are talking about the rankings right now. That's what you have to consider when making rankings of a position or of a player. I'm tired of people just assuming, well, if it's the very end of it, that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to produce again. You don't know what the future is. You could project it and make a prediction from there, and that's what your rankings are going to be. If you think Deebo Samuel produced like a top 5 wide receiver, then say it with your chest. That's my little rant for the day. I know this was going to be a shorter video, but I'm just tired of hearing about recency bias, recency bias, recency bias. It's the same thing with the NBA, but I just wanted to focus on the NFL because that is one that has been prominent on like all the social medias. A lot of people are debating on ranking certain players, specifically with the Rams and the Bengals. People are just saying, well, I'm going to put this guy above him just because past 3 years he's had more production. That's fine, but right now you have to account what they did in this year, and a lot of people are discrediting the current year in making their rankings. If you are at this point of the video, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I'm trying to produce as many videos as possible with as busy of a schedule as I do, and I am trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of summer. And if you have a hot take, please drop it in the comments below. I'm going to be trying to do a hot take video in the next coming days. I will listen to your hot take and give you my opinion on it and see if it's as hot as you think it is. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.